Hello, hello. Welcome to Platform. Welcome to our February Community Connect. It's so great to see so many familiar faces and some new ones too. My name is Renu Chandarana, and I'm the manager of memberships here at Platform. Before I get started, I want to give you a quick update. The score is 1-0 for Canada. Yeah, I knew you were wanting to know. I'd love to introduce you to my team here, the membership team, Nero Ozabeme, our membership specialist, and Kim Aban, our ecosystem engagement specialist. The three of us would be happy to chat with you anytime to answer any of your Platform membership questions if you have any. Platform Calgary created Community Connect with one goal in mind: to bring the ecosystem out of the offices and into the same room. Every third Thursday of the month, we encourage our members to step away from their grind to join each other for lunch and listen to a feature fireside chat from a fellow member. It's a place to be honest about the hurdles, celebrate the big wins, and support one another's growth. So if you're here for the first time, welcome. We're so glad you're here to experience this community firsthand. Before we begin, please turn your attention to the screens for a video to honor the land that we stand on, with a much longer history of community and connection.
That's what makes us strong. That's what makes us strong people.
Growing up, my grandma always told me that the land took care of us, and it still is taking care of us, and it never asked for anything back.
It is a way of life to always honor the environment. It's not something that you just can turn on and off. It's a living daily lifestyle.
I'd like to welcome a partner from our sponsor, Fasken Law, to the stage, Jason Gaborski.
Thanks, that feels awkward. I haven't really accomplished anything, but you can clap after I'm done in case I get too nervous. How about that? Anyway, thank you very much. My name's Jason Gaborski. I'm a partner at Fasken. We're a law firm, and I, along with my partner, Brad Schneider, co-lead the emerging technology practice group here for the Alberta region and then prairies more generally, often heading out to Saskatchewan to meet tech companies out there. I'd like to thank Platform for putting this on today. This is obviously a huge success. I understand it's a sellout, standing room only, which is obvious, so that's great. I'd like to acknowledge the Government of Alberta's Tech and Innovation Minister, Nate Glubish, who is here with us today. Thanks for making the trip. I'd like to thank Calgary Foothills MLA Court Ellingson, as well as Calgary Centre MP Greg McLean for being here. Look, I'm going to now do a bit of a plug for Fasken and then turn it back over to the regular programming. We're a full-service international law firm, but we do have one of the largest emerging technology and venture capital groups in the country, and we've been supporting tech groups for a long time, especially starting out in Vancouver in the 90s and going through that, and we've been successful across the country over the last 30 years, supporting capital funds, acquirers, founders with high-growth tech companies in the space. We've been locally here, we've been a proud partner of Platform Calgary since its inception. We enjoy the collaboration and the nature that Platform brings. We love working with Jen and Lee and everybody here as well, and what they bring to Calgary and the Alberta technology sector more generally. So thanks again for having us, and I'll hand it back over.
Thank you, Jason. Now, to give us a full picture of our collective impact in 2025, I'd like to introduce the person leading the charge here at Platform, our interim CEO, Jen Lussier.
Thank you. Hello, welcome in, welcome back. I couldn't be prouder today to be standing here talking about the accomplishments that we've had in the last year. let me change this. I've got too many things in my hand. It's been a busy year. Let's just put it like that. We work to grow and connect the tech sector and to be able to compete on a global stage and build a thriving tech sector for generations to come. You can download the full report here, or if you're analog like me, grab a printed copy on your way out. I'm going to barely skim the surface. But I'm going to start with where we are competing and how we are doing. The work is working. We have contributed almost $7 billion into Calgary's economy. At a time, increasing by 13% at a time where other markets globally are crashing by 14%. We're the fastest growing tech talent city in North America, growing by 61% in an incredible pace. And on the investment side, over $700 million raised in 21 to 2023. First half of 2025, we're already breaking through those numbers again, while other areas in the world are actually shrinking. Our core work, let's talk pure economic development. So we focus on company formation. We have over 850 tech companies here in Calgary now. About 400 of those have been incorporated just in the past 4 years. Those companies are creating jobs, over 24,000 of the platform company members that are here. They're generating revenue, $235 million just in 2025, and they're securing investment, over $300 million and over $1 billion in capital since 2018. So I want to take a pause. These are the people that are actually doing the hard work. Let's give them a round of applause. Outside of economic development, we do a lot of ecosystem building, and that's a word we use a lot, and it means a lot of different things to a lot of different people. Many ways that we define it, starting in your top left, is of course helping build capacity for founders, entrepreneurs. So people raise their hand to come here. They want to learn how to build. They want to learn how to raise money. They want to learn how to hire. And they want to learn how to generate revenue and find customers. Up by 36% from our year prior, 1,500 founders served directly in our programming. We don't do all this by ourselves. We have a partner network of over 180 other organizations, and 75 of those call Platform Calgary their home. They bring another 30,000 or more of community with them here to connect, to collide, to build capacity, take their very first step into tech, maybe start a company, maybe join a company, maybe upskill. All these things happen here. You can see the numbers of investment, almost one-to-one on helping investors connect with startups that are investment ready or very close to being investment ready. So we're so proud of this work. We've the bottom right there, 172,000 people through the doors in 2025, which is a lot of people. And in the last quarter of 2025, we were increasing to almost 30,000 people a month, which is like almost a university campus coming through the doors. The reason we track this, it's a vibrancy index. We know when you come to Platform, you're either a founder, a student, a job seeker, a career changer, you're an investor, you're a mentor or a coach or a subject matter expert, or you're a support partner or service organization that's helping these companies. And so we're very, very proud of these numbers. Our signature event last year, Calgary Innovation Week, again, record attendance at that, over 1,400 people here. To note, yes, we had over 47 events here, but more importantly, we had 26 out in the community. The Calgary tech community isn't just within this footprint. It is the entire city, and this is a citywide effort and collection with all of our partners, with the Chamber, with the CED, with the universities, with like all of the partners here. And so we're very proud of that. And we also track first-time founders there, 37, or first-time attendees, 37%. It's something that we always work to try to get more and more people having their very first exposure into tech so that they can find their path through. Coming forward in 2026, it's still coming. The demand is crazy, and it's great. We saw a 36% growth rate in founders raising their hands for help from 2024 to 2025, and we're projecting another 20% increase for this year. I already talked about the visitors through Platform. We still need to keep 10xing the number of startups that are created, and we've got really exciting ways we're going to be doing that. AI, rapid MVP prototyping, better connections and pathways into industry and customer. All these are on the books for 2026. And along with that, we take all those nonprofit partners that offer the wraparound supports that come along with it. A lot of numbers on this screen. Our atomic unit in this ecosystem is people, every single face and one of you. And I just want to say thank you first of all, to our board. I'm sure we have any from our board here right now. Our advisory council, a long list of generous donors, many of which are serial tech entrepreneurs that have put their own skin in the game because they believe in the future of Calgary, they believe in the future of tech in Calgary. Our corporate partners provide us critical funding, and of course our public funders that are the City of Calgary, Alberta Innovates, Prairies Can, and OSIF. So please find yourself a copy, and thank you so much for listening to my brief review of 2025. Thank you very much. Brief program change. Okay, so with that in mind and all those stats and information that we've just gone through, you see the work that we're trying to do here, and it's critical. To get a tech sector to grow in a city that has historically been more focused on a singular industry, it takes ideas, it takes talent, it takes capital, risk takers, but it also takes a government and a mindset of policy that can help understands the space and then can move at the speed of business. So that's why I'm very honored today to introduce Minister elected as MLA for Strathcona-Sherwood Park in 2019. Since then, he's been a tireless advocate for Alberta's tech ecosystem. In 2022, he was appointed to lead the newly created Minister of Technology and Innovation. In this role, he has led the charge in making Alberta one of the most attractive destinations for innovators in North America. But what makes Minister Glubish uniquely suited for this portfolio is his life before politics. And we just did a roundtable with 15 startups and scale-ups, and exactly why came out, which you are about to hear on this panel. Before entering public service, Minister Glubish spent 15 years building and investing in Alberta's tech sector. As a venture capital investor with firms like Yaletown Partners, he sat on the same side of the table as many of our founders and investors. He understands what it takes to commercialize a dream, to raise capital, and to take Alberta-born innovation to a global market. He isn't just a policymaker, he's a champion for our ecosystem who speaks the language of innovation. Please join me in welcoming Minister of Technology and Innovation, the Honourable Nate Glubish.
Well, thank you very much for those kind words. Good to see you all here. What a great crowd. Always happy to be here in Calgary at Platform Calgary to talk about the future of innovation in this province. So thanks to Platform for hosting this great day and also for organizing the roundtable earlier. Before we talk about what comes next, I think it's important to just acknowledge how far we've come. I got my start as a venture capital, I wouldn't say a venture capital investor. I was an analyst for a venture capital firm in 2004. So I've been following the tech sector for 22 years. And I can tell you in 2004, things looked drastically different. There were two funds cutting checks in Alberta. Mine was one of them. There was maybe $2 or $3 million a year being invested into Alberta tech companies at that time. Fast forward to about 2017, we had maybe $30 million a year being invested into Alberta tech companies. And now, if you look at just the last 3 years, we had $2.1 billion invested into Alberta tech companies. That's something to be excited about. It's progress. We're making waves in not just Alberta's tech sector, but all across the country and around the world. And Calgary has been the epicenter of that. Calgary has been recognized all around the world as one of the fastest growing and most exciting tech hubs in the world. And so all of you are part of that and should be proud of that. We also have seen now about a dozen tech unicorns reaching that $1 billion market cap. Always more to do. We want dozens, not a dozen, but it's progress. And through Alberta's technology and innovation strategy, we've now seen hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars of investment and leveraged funding from the federal government coming to Alberta startups and scale-ups and research projects across this province. We've seen hundreds of new patents and licenses and intellectual property transfers come through the work that we've done through this strategy. We've seen the creation of 8,200 direct jobs in the companies that have been supported through these programs. This is progress. But that's where we've come from. Where are we going? What comes next? Well, there's three key things I'm going to touch on briefly. Obviously, I know I only have a few minutes, so we could talk about this all day. But I want to talk about three things just to give you a bit of a taste of what we're focused on as a province right now with some strategic priorities. The first has to do with intellectual property. The second has to do with something we call co-investment, which will help to address some of the challenges of access to scale-up capital. And the third is some procurement reform. So let me start with IP. If any of you are following what the Canadian Council of Innovators have been advocating for on the national stage recently, what you're hearing is Canada has always been really good at attracting, retaining, and developing world-class talent. And Alberta is no exception. We have amazing researchers, entrepreneurs, and innovators and entrepreneurs. But what we have done poorly as a country, this isn't just an Alberta thing, this isn't all a Canada thing. We have done a very poor job of commercializing those ideas and protecting those ideas and turning it into patents and protectable proprietary intellectual property. And what happens instead is those ideas ultimately get sucked up into American companies, and they ultimately create wealth for American investors. And that is a policy failure across this country. We need to make sure that the investments that we make as governments on behalf of taxpayers are going to fund research and technology commercialization that will lead to something that is proprietary, protectable, that is patented, that is, and that is owned by Albertans. Maybe not exclusively, but the majority of the cap table of the companies commercializing these ideas should be Albertan, because we want to make sure that when we have a big success, the wealth created by those successes stays in the hands of Albertans and can be repatriated into the next ideas and the next companies and the next investments. And so what you're going to see over this upcoming year is a lot of work coming out of my team on developing a more comprehensive IP strategy that will help us to make sure that as we are investing in research and technology commercialization, that we are doing so with that level of focus to make sure that we are creating wealth for Albertans, that we are creating opportunities for Alberta entrepreneurs and innovators and academics, and that ultimately we are creating Alberta-owned intellectual property that will be used all around the world. Number two, co-invest. So I talked a lot about the progress that we've had in attracting capital, and a lot of that has been in the early stage of capital. And we've gone from, again, just 30 million a year in 2017 to 700 million a year each year in the last 3 years. That's great progress. But one of the areas where we have some challenges still is once you get to being a very successful company, you're not a startup anymore, you're now a scale-up. And you're maybe raising, $50 million in your next fundraise, or $100 million, or maybe more. Those rounds are hard to fill with Canadian money, because there isn't the same number of investors who get tech who are willing to cut those big checks. And so it's not to say that they aren't here, but there's not as many of them. And as a result, many of our most successful companies that do scale up, that do reach $1 billion market cap, and that are raising that next round of investment have to go outside of Alberta and many times outside of Canada to raise that money. And what that means is that the ownership stake of those companies, the cap table, is now controlled in many cases by Americans. And the challenge there is then you have investors who don't care about Alberta, they just care about making money. And they often will exercise their influence and their ownership to compel the founders to move that company to a different jurisdiction. And what we have is a different version of the brain drain that we all remember from 15, 20 years ago. We used to lose all of our talent, now we're losing our ideas and our companies. We need to stop that. And how do we stop that? We need to make sure it's easier for companies to raise their larger rounds, the mature Series A rounds and the Series B rounds, and the secondary fundraisers to take out their early stage investors after they've been in business for 5 to 10 years. And so what we're talking about right now is creating a policy framework that will permit co-investment by the Alberta government. And what do I mean by that? Well, first of all, it's not about Alberta picking winners and losers, because government's never going to be good at that, even if you have a VC as the innovation minister. The fact is, we need to create an environment where we can come alongside of the best investors in the world as they invest in the best companies in Alberta. And so what we're looking to do is model after Quebec and the experience that the positive experience they've had with CDPQ and Investissement Québec. And what they do is they look at the best Quebec companies and they say, if they're raising a late Series A or a Series B round, and if there's a qualified lead investor, and what we mean by that is a world-class investor who has a track record, who has experience, if they step up and say, we're going to do $25 million out of that $100 million investment, well, then we will match them. We'll participate in that round on the same terms. And that has worked extremely well for them. They have made exceptional returns on investment for their taxpayers, and they have kept Quebec's best companies in Quebec. We want to replicate that success with the co-invest model. So what we are working to do is create a policy environment that will define what is a qualified lead investor. What are the conditions under which the Alberta government would consider co-investing? And of course, only in Alberta companies. This will help over time get us to a point where through organizations like Alberta Enterprise Corporation, which is our venture capital fund of funds, and through Alberta Innovates, which is our innovation agency, we would be able to take a direct equity stake in Alberta's fastest growing, most exciting scale-up tech companies in partnership with the best and brightest investors in the world. And by doing so, what we know will happen is when you can get a lead investor who will do 25% of your round, and then if you have another investor, like the Government of Alberta, who comes in and says, we'll do another 25%, the second half of that financing is so much easier to close. Any of you who are entrepreneurs who've raised money, you know the first half of your round is the hardest half. Once you get that committed, it is so much easier to find the follow-on investors to close out the round. So, IP, we want to make sure we're focused on owning ideas, protecting those ideas, commercializing those ideas. Co-invest. This will solve the scale-up access to capital challenges that we face in Alberta and help us to take our tech sector to new heights. And I know that if we do that well, Calgary will be the biggest beneficiary. Finally, procurement reform. This is a way in which we aim to overcome the bureaucratic nonsense that has stopped us from shopping local for far too long. Yes, we have trade agreement obligations, but you know what? There's room to be a little bit creative. And one of the things that we're going to do is we are transforming the technology procurement arm of government, which I do have control over as the Minister of Technology and Innovation. And we are using artificial intelligence to develop some proprietary tools to make it easier for us to communicate with the public in Alberta about what are the things we need to buy, what does success look like, and then to make it easier for Alberta-based companies to bid on doing that work. And I'll just give you a quick teaser on that, and then we'll get on to the rest of the program. So first of all, one of the problems in procurement is that governments are historically very vague in defining what they're trying to buy. And that makes it hard for small and medium-sized Alberta companies to bid because you don't know if you've got what it takes to meet the needs. You can't anticipate everything that we might need because we didn't tell you what we need. And as a result, the only people bidding are the Deloittes and the EYs and the KPMGs. And far too often, we end up with overpriced contracts that lead to subpar results for Albertans. So we are working on using AI to help better scope out our RFPs so that we can publish RFPs in minutes instead of months, and they can be precise so that you will know exactly what we're looking for, and you will know whether or not you're a fit for that. So that will help on one front. But the second piece is that we will be launching soon a tool that will be an online portal that is AI augmented so that you could go and say, I want to bid on this. Okay. Instead of you having to spend months and maybe even having to hire a couple people to help you with bidding on this, you can go through our AI procurement wizard tool and you can upload your website, upload your marketing materials, upload your white papers, upload any materials you have that explain what you do and why you're really good at it. And it will auto-populate the RFP for you and ensure that it is 100% compliant with the Alberta government's procurement process. And it will give you a step-by-step process that you can follow to make sure that you put your best foot forward and maximize your chances of doing business with the Government of Alberta. By doing this, by being more clear and by giving that tool to Alberta companies to be able to use, we are confident it will be so much easier for small and medium-sized businesses who historically couldn't even afford to try and bid to now not just bid but actually win projects with the Government of Alberta. And this will help us to repatriate a bunch of the money that we're already spending on technology solutions to support Alberta's service delivery as a government. We will have far more Alberta content in that. And that what I know from experience is that finding a customer is so much more rewarding and valuable than finding a grant. Because a grant is one time, but a customer's for life if you do a good job. And imagine how valuable the customer is on your resume as an entrepreneur if that customer is the Government of Alberta. So by focusing on IP, by focusing on co-invest, and by focusing on procurement reform, we think we can take Alberta's tech sector to a whole new level. And I can't wait to show you in a couple of years how far we've gone in just the next couple of years. So thank you so much for your time. Looking forward to our panel. Hope you have a great afternoon.
I'd like to now just invite our panelists up to grab a seat on the stage, please. And sorry, this is really sticky. There we go. Excellent. So just by way of very brief introduction, I know we've only got 30 minutes and a very tight topic and a very full stage here. Obviously, Minister Glubish. We also welcome Deb Yedlin, the CEO of the Chamber, Judy Fairburn, General Partner for the 51, among many other hats that she wears, and Brad Parry with a fairly deceivious looking photo, I must say. President and CEO of CED, welcome. Thanks so much for joining us. So we are going to start with the topic that's been a bit of a political catchphrase since, when was it, November 2024, whenever the geopolitical bombs started falling around tariffs, and it's around supporting local. And so we want to open the conversation and really talk about, what does it mean? How can we actually actionalize supporting local? So many members that we talk to, it's impossible to find a customer in their own backyard here. So, how big of a problem is this? Does government have a role? Is this a mindset issue? What are we talking about? How can we really get past admiring this problem and kind of get into solutioning? So I'm going to start, I think, with Judy. I think you had lots you wanted to say on this, and we'll just kind of pepper around. Thanks.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'll come from the perspective of the 51's funds, and we're invested across health tech, fintech, clean tech, as well as our sister company, Naya Ventures, which I'm a general partner of as well, that's in food and ag tech. And I'd say it's sector dependent. And in the realm of clean tech, I think we've got a really strong ecosystem here. And take Arrington, Calgary-based company with two real dynamo women leading it. ATCO out of the gate was supportive of them with an early demonstration pilot. That was good, gave a reference customer. They've now gone global. And I think as we get into our conversation on scaling capital, they have had proactive Asia capital come to them. And so it's almost like we have to make sure we're agile enough to follow on. Then if I look another sector in ag tech, on our fund there, Brilliant Harvest, AI for equipment dealers. Super savvy cereal founder, Remy Schmaltz, no problem attracting local customers or, again, very aggressive US-led capital, and we're in it as well. Health tech, Nia Health out of Edmonton. With the progressive approach being taken on health tech in Alberta, they can see where you can offer some proactive services on biomarker testing and other areas to be ahead of being proactive on your health. And they're growing really, really well. There's other sectors, though, where it's been really hard. We've got one company in construction tech, Dyno. They had to move down to Texas because the sector was too slow here to buy on. So I'd say, in summary, let's tell the stories where there is strong traction, what led to it. Get the ecosystems around them. I'm going to say in the world of energy, clean tech, which I've been in for a few decades, good folks in the room there, I see up in the upper corner, getting rolling with, Avatar most recently, and CRIN, and then CDL across sectors has been super key to getting the ecosystems for quicker local adoption.
Thanks, Judy. Brad or Deb, what are what are some tangible things we could do to help along the lines of local procurement or community behavior in helping local Calgarians buy local?
Yeah, I think it's. I think what the minister said is bang on, right? Getting a check is great, but getting a customer is way better. But I think we need to change the mindset. I think there's too many people. There's an adage everybody knows, right? Canadians want to fight to be first, to be second. And I think we need to change that. Like we need to have people willing to take risks. We need POCs from major corporates. We need to unlock some of the corporate venture capital to help some of this. But it comes down to wanting to try stuff. And to Judy's point, I can't agree more. I think it's getting the stories out there, right? Because you're so scared, you're afraid to make a mistake, you're afraid to put your head up. Oh my God, I'll lose my job if I try something new. Well, we got to get rid of that. We got to have this mentality where failure is okay, but we're helping our local companies fail and learn. But it's also on the other side too. I think it's on the entrepreneurs too. They've got to be able to take that feedback. This idea of building it and they will come has got to stop. Yeah, you need to know what the hell's going on. You need to have a PMF that actually makes sense, and you need to go out and talk to people. You can't just build it on your own in your basement thinking, oh my God, I know the business. You don't have a fucking clue what these guys are thinking. And so you need to get out there and start talking to people. The third thing I think is we need to also keep showcasing what's happening. I know the city's trying to do some of that stuff, but it's imperative to get those guys out of the towers, down here, seeing, feeling, touching, and hearing the stories and getting that recommendation from someone else who's gone through the process. Yes, it's not going to be easy, and we talk about this all the time. Collaboration sucks. It's incredibly hard, but it's the most important thing we can do, and we need to get our corporates to get their head out of their ass and start to support these local companies to do it right.
So I just to add to that, I think we're starting to see a shift in the mindset in terms of companies starting to support homegrown companies, and I think Dave Mackay was here in September talking about how the Royal Bank's really focused on that. They're supporting Cohere. Federal government's now looking at the Cohere, and I think we need to get more. Just to Brad's point, big companies need to start supporting what's here, and perhaps really focus on dedicating a portion of investment capital to supporting what's happening in this ecosystem. I mean, Synovus was a great example as a first mover in that context. And I think we just need to see more of that because there is capital to be deployed and there is a way to structure it so that it does support the founders. But it is about storytelling. It's also about coming to the chamber and saying, you know what, we need to convene. We need to convene, we need to talk, we need to showcase, we need to talk about some of the challenges, we have to talk about what we can connect people with the stories where the capital can come from. And I just wanted to also mention one thing. Judy talked about clean tech and Avatar. I wanted to shout out the Energy Transition Center. I can't tell you how many times I talk about the Energy Transition Center and say it's the only one in Canada. And when I say that in Ottawa, they say, really? What's in there? Well, let me tell you what's in there. So it's those kinds of stories that we have to start talking about in terms of what's being generated in organizations like that. So. But
I also think the minister, Judy, the minister made a point, right? I think that, look, when we run the OSIF fund, our job isn't to pick the winners and losers, as the minister said. The market should decide who the winner and loser is. But what we have to do, though, is make sure we get behind the winners more. Like, we're not doing a good enough job of taking those winners and moving them to the next level and really helping them grow and scale. And yes, that means some will fail. And unfortunately, that's part of the ecosystem. That's part of learning. That's part of growing. But I know that from our standpoint, from a CED standpoint, that's what we're looking at, right? When we think about the innovation strategy, as companies start to be chosen and the market says, yes, this is somebody we're going to get behind, we have to go behind them and help them find new markets and new customers and new ways to do business in other places. So. Well,
and we're different than the U.S. I mean, the problem is that so many companies start up and think they're going to, because the capital's there, because the market's bigger, the products that are being delivered are not necessarily for Canada. And so let's change that mentality. Let's make sure that we're doing something that's really focused on local or national rather than south of the border, because then that right out of the gate, you've defeated yourself if you really want to be a leader in Canada.
So if I could jump in for a second, I want to double click on what a few of my panelists here have said. First, to Deborah's point, there's never been a better time than now. We are at a turning point where the national consciousness is far more willing than ever to say we got to shop local. And I think what we've seen in the trade relationship with the U.S. under President Donald Trump has been a wake-up call to all Canadians to say, holy crap, we are way too dependent on that country, and all it takes is one person to completely turn that relationship on its head. We don't like that. We shouldn't like that. We need to do things different. And so where even just 2 years ago doors might have been closed in corporate Canada, say, well, whatever, just trust the process. I think folks are much more open to say, we gotta think about who are the Canadian superstars and the Alberta superstars that we can invest in and do business with. So I think there's way more of an opportunity now. So to any of you who maybe struggled and had a lot of doors closed in your face before, get out there and be entrepreneurial and just don't take no for an answer, because I think the appetite is shifting. The second thing though, and this is a little bit more of a practical, what can we be doing, is just government can be leading by example and saying, we are going to be more innovative as a public service. We are going to adopt more technology. We are going to use more technology in everything we do so that we can deliver better quality services and we can save money and become more productive. And if we do a good job of that, then we can say to the rest of the country and say, if we can do it, surely you can do it too, and we can show you how. But then we can talk about those successes and say, hey, by using this AI-empowered technology that maybe had an Alberta company that's a part of it, we were able to accomplish outcomes A, B, C, and we saved millions of dollars, and we saved months of time, and Albertans had a better experience. Tangible, real, practical stories instead of abstract theory will go a long way to help building momentum. So we're going to be focused, with the procurement example I told you about earlier, and just our drive to be the most innovative jurisdiction in Canada as a public service. Then I think we can lead by example and encourage and inspire the private sector to follow suit.
I want to give some real practical advice through our venture capital funds. In my previous life, leading Synovus's corporate venture capital and co-founding Evoke Innovations, met with thousands of founders. And at CDL, great program. And I'd say something I learned over 20 years ago is still true. Invest in an A founder, even if they haven't got everything all figured out, versus an A technology. Because A founders will listen, they'll hustle, they'll pivot when they need to. And so again, in the room here, we will probably talk about IP a bit. IP is great, but God, market, hustle, listening, really understanding your customer pain points is number one. And then secondly, if I can just finish, from the potential customer's point of view, and I'll put on my prior corporate hat, I'm going to say stop the Canadian no. What I love at the CDL table is we are very direct with our feedback, but we do give feedback rather than saying nothing. I just pain for the founders out there that are holding their breath for an answer back from a corporation, and that corporation's either not going to give them the direct advice that it's a no, or they're just stringing the founders along to learn from them.
So just to add to that, there's somebody in the community who has a story about a founder that he did back, and backed for perhaps too long, and ran into them several years down the road, and the individual said to them, you know what? You needed to say no, because I spent 10 years trying to chase that dream, and I really should have just been told that, I needed to move on from the idea I had. And that also speaks to the importance of being coachable. If you can't sort of listen to the mentors and the people that are trying to help you, you're also going to, so as much as it's a founder thing, you need to be able to talk to people, you need to be able to take that coaching advice and be able to, as Judy said, pivot.
Brad, you had one last comment there, or
I
we
was
can
coaching. Exactly. I think you
Okay.
have to be open as a founder. Like, you got to listen as much as you want to believe. You've been told you got to have the passion, you have the drive. Don't let go of your dream. You got to be realistic. You have to have that ruthless objectivity and look at that stuff and take the feedback, because these people aren't doing it to be mean. They're doing it to help you because they want you to succeed. Especially in a city like Calgary, right? Everybody in Calgary wants everybody to do incredibly well, which is way different than other markets around North America. So take that coaching and accept it and try to pivot and drive it forward.
And I just want to put a shout out to the entire room. You're a network, and for founders, I'm going to give you an example of something that happened yesterday. So there's a founder out there that's got a device that you can easily clip on to hearing aids for those in the elder homes. Made an introduction to an elder home. They're already going to pilot it. So you never know, even in your personal lives, if you can be helpful as a potential customer by making a linkage.
Love it. Thank you. Okay. We'll shift gears a little bit and start talking about access to capital that's on the sidelines, and the challenges around that. And Minister has given us some great insights or foresights into what's coming from a policy perspective. But how can we get more capital off sidelines? Who wants to take that first?
I'll start. I appreciate the minister's comments about the Investissement Quebec and the CDPQ. But I also want to point out that Quebec has had a long history of fostering and supporting its own homegrown companies. So way back in the late 70s, early 80s, they had a policy whereby if you were going to go public, you had to make your offering, if your company was headquartered in Quebec, it became QSSP eligible, so it was eligible for the Quebec Savings Plan, and investors had a tax write-off if they bought in on the IPO. And that actually sort of was a precursor to the CDPQ and the Investissement Québec model that is now so successful. The point is that mindset was set in the early 80s. And so people are committed to supporting the Quebec-grown companies. And if you do think about it from a tax perspective, that actually supports a couple of things. One is you have an exit for a company that needs to provide liquidity for its investors, and that pool of capital will come from the retail sector. Second thing is, broadly speaking, we don't do enough in terms of IPOs in this country. You see that number continue to fall. If there's a way to encourage listings on the TMX venture and the TMX, that's also good, because then you have liquidity in what you've created, and you have access to capital going forward. I mean, it's a bit of a, it's an interesting conversation right now about PE versus public markets. Obviously, people have reasons for staying private, but there are models. There's also flow-through shares that we've used in the energy sector for years, right? Developed in Canada, developed in Calgary. Flow-through shares where you renounce tax benefits to your investor. Why can't we do that for tech companies?
The JCP as well.
Yeah.
Thanks, Judy.
And I applaud, Minister, your attention to co-invest along lead investors and that partnership that you're looking to do, drawing upon the deep sector investing expertise coming in, particularly post-Series A. And I think that's really important, coupled with continuing with the fund of funds. Some in the room may think being a venture capitalist is easy. God damn it. It is way harder than I had to work as a corporate executive. I will tell you that right now. It is a lot of hard work.
You should try being a politician.
Yeah.
I've done both, I can tell you. One's harder.
I gotcha.
And for less money.
And founders, I mean, you all work so frigging hard. And so, I think us continuing to build strong expertise of co-investing alongside funds in sectors that Alberta can really, really thrive at, and that go with our core areas in energy, ag tech, and certainly fintech, health tech. I'm missing many other places, but driving from our the logistics, aerospace,
the defense sector.
Yeah. It's really important. And what I would also say, like our two funds. Our set of funds, rather, we're 30% invested in Alberta. We invest across the country and into the States, but we've got good deal flow here, and we're proud of it. So let's continue building our ecosystems in those realms. And I think what I might put as another example is France's TIBI initiative. Has good indications. So for our sectors that maybe aren't there yet in terms of tight ecosystems to accelerate capital, talent, and customers, government can play a role to convene this with industries at the table, corporates, institutions, to bolster even more capital from those realms. Because I think in Canada, and I'm really thankful that ATB and AEC are investors in our Food and Ag Tech Fund, along National Bank and other FCC, BDC, and others, Innovia in our VC and in our food and the 51 funds. We need to see a lot more, as we said earlier, corporates and institutions investing in Canada.
I mean, Jen and I have talked about this a lot. I think it's teaching people how to invest in high risk. Yeah. I think that's the challenge, right? We talk about game theory, as you've heard. The game theory is two outcomes. One, you play the game to keep the game going, or you play the game to end the game. And here right now, we're playing the game to end the game too much. And so we need to educate people who have the wealth, and we do have a lot of wealth in this city, that I may lose 15 or 20 grand, but I may turn into something else. If I invest in an A founder who may not make it, but something else will come of that. I mean, if you look at even Uber, I'm not sure if you saw the data that came out right before Christmas. 20 years ago, somebody put in 15 grand or 10 grand, and now it's worth $10 million. You know, so they're taking the risk because they know it's going to help the ecosystem drive it forward. But we've got to tell the stories. I know the Investor Hub, we've invested in that with Jen as well to help get that education out there. But we also need the flow through. We need the stories where somebody's had that exit and come back in. But I think, again, it's the storytelling and getting people to understand that this is more than just that return right away on the investment.
Yeah, and if I could build on that. Oh, sorry, Minister.
No, go ahead.
Brad Zumwalt had a great quote that I used a few years ago, which was, our Canadian investment mentality tends to be one of going for singles instead of home runs. And one of the home runs that happened recently, back in 2011, Synovus and our fund, we did an investment in General Fusion for a couple $1 million. It just IPO'd in the US on the exchange for about $1 billion in value. And and the money wasn't going to come from Canada. That was hard, but they worked hard to make that transaction happen. That's a kind of home run type of bet.
Well, it was actually close to the edge about 6 months
I know it
before, so,
was.
yeah, right?
Right.
Yeah.
They got money.
Most of those home runs were close to the edge many times before they became a home run.
Exactly.
So a couple things I want to just draw on. Lots of great points made here today. First of all, I agree that IPOs are a great goal and a great vehicle, but we need to also still stay focused on how do we make sure that companies are getting to a mature enough stage that they're worth doing an IPO, right? Like I've been a part of several companies where through necessity, they went public as the vehicle to raise $2 or $3 million because they couldn't find the money anywhere else. But then they had $1 million a year in compliance costs to be public. And sometimes that's a gamble that pays off, but other times that ends up crippling the company. And so I don't think that's what you were suggesting. I think what you were getting at is like, we want the $1 billion IPOs or the multi-billion dollar IPOs, and I totally agree. So we need to be thinking as a tech ecosystem and as a government, what do we got to do to make sure that companies don't leave Alberta or sell out before they get to $1 billion or 10 billion or 50 billion in market cap? And we certainly need to be shooting for how could we get a $50 billion or $100 billion IPO out of an Alberta company. Once we get that stage, it starts to unlock enormous amounts of wealth in the hands of Albertans who are entrepreneurs, innovators, or investors who know how to build something, and they can take that wealth and repatriate it into the next deal and the next deal and the next deal, and that will supercharge the momentum. So a line there that we got to try and help, and that's quite frankly why I want the co-invest model, is it will help to make sure that before someone's necessarily ready for an IPO, they can raise that serious Series B round and go for another year or two to get them to the point where they would be ready for an IPO. So I think we're talking about a lot of the same things. The second thing is about getting money off the sidelines. So this is no longer a government thing. This is just how do we take all of the wealth that's been created in Alberta in traditional industries and help the holders of that wealth to recognize that tech is a very exciting opportunity for them to put as part of their portfolios. We're not saying, hey, you made $1 billion, invest all of it in tech. We're saying you made $1 billion, put 5% of it into tech, and you won't be disappointed. But you got to do it the right way, because to your point, being a VC is hard. You got to do it on a portfolio-based approach. Don't put it all into one company. And you got to learn how to curate deal flow. So whether that means you want to become an investor or whether that means you want to partner with funds, there's more than one way to get to the end result, which is more money into tech. So what I'm trying to do as innovation minister who has a history in venture, I sort of straddle both sides of the fence. I'm trying to use my convening power as a minister and a former VC to say, okay, you've made some money, great. Let me tell you about the biggest successes I've ever been a part of in tech. Let me tell you about the biggest successes I'm seeing coming out of Alberta's tech ecosystem. Let's brag about our biggest successes, and that will then inspire the folks who made their money in traditional industries to say, well, I didn't realize you could make that kind of money in tech. I didn't realize you could build those kinds of world-changing technologies in Alberta. You can do that? Yes, you can. We've got to celebrate those success stories. It's a team effort. That's why I try to make sure my LinkedIn channel is almost exclusively focused on celebrating Alberta tech and celebrating Alberta tech success stories. And so that'll get people inspired. Then you got to educate them on the process. How do you go out and meet founders? How do you go out and meet other investors? How do you learn about the process of investing as a tech investor? Because it's very different than investing in oil and gas or investing in real estate or investing in a traditional construction business. You need to learn those details. Because if you just try and push people to invest in tech without understanding it, they're going to lose their money. And if they lose their money once, they'll never invest again. And that's why the Alberta Investor Tax Credit from a former government administration, it was well-meaning. It was a policy instrument designed with the intent of getting money from from folks on the sidelines into tech. But in practice, what it led to was people said, oh, the government's giving me 30 cents on the dollar back. This must be no risk. This must be fine. I can invest in anything. And they ended up investing in lots of companies that weren't ready. They were not going to scale. They were not going to succeed. And they lost all their money. And now an entire generation of investors are jaded against investing in tech forever. So we got to be smart about how we do it. And sometimes it's not just about a government policy. Sometimes it's about just going out and doing the hard work, building the networks, telling the stories, and inviting people to participate in the ecosystem.
And if I could really commend Alberta Innovates, CED, Platform for the work they do in educating investors and founders, certainly with our Movement 51 nonprofit, educating founders and women investors in particular. It's open to all, though. I think that really helps people that are interested in investing to get a grounding, a foundation. I also applaud the Alberta Security Commission and how important they are and how they've been trying to enable that, plus have it not just be accredited investors, but those that have the right training and more than $75,000 annual, that they can dabble and start to get in and learn by doing.
We've been pushing the ASC really hard to try and reduce the barriers. We get that there's a role to play to protect folks who really don't know what they're doing from getting in over their head, but I think that they had erred on the side of being too restrictive, and so we're trying to make it easier, again, because if you can make it easier for folks to actually cut the checks, then it's going to make it easier for folks to find those investors.
Brad, Deb, final thoughts. We're at time here, but anything you want to add?
So I just wanted to add, we've come a long way in the last 10 years in terms of how we support the ecosystem, who's come to the table, the number of family offices, the venture capital organizations, and the private equity folks that are playing and supporting our ecosystem. I think that's part, I'm going to just shout out Creative Destruction Labs, Heather's here, but the CDL model has been so important in changing that mindset that was so used to investing in energy and is now investing in things that are more on the tech space, or whether it's clean tech, fintech, ag tech, whatever it is that all the different streams that CDL has. It's changed the mentality of people who are business leaders in the city, and they in turn have sort of started to support that next generation of investors and that next generation of capital. And I think that's what's really important, because that's been foundational, and that's really happened since 2014, 2015.
Absolutely. Brad?
I mean, I think I totally agree. I think it's not all doom and gloom, though. I mean, if you take a look at the life cycle of what's happening, and we did more deals in Calgary last year than Vancouver. Yep. Now, the volume of capital was lower, but if you go back to what Vancouver or Toronto or Austin was like 15 years ago, you're seeing that same trajectory, right? So you're seeing small checks, getting to build, getting the ecosystem to understand, getting investors to understand. Where you're going to see now is more capital coming in, bigger checks, bigger companies, but I think we have to help companies scale. That's the one thing we don't do well right now. And I also think it's on the founders, because founders want to leave at the $50 million mark, but that's a whole other conversation. But I think we do need to make sure that we have the right pieces in place for companies to help them scale. We need people who understand growth marketing. We need to bring that kind of talent in and grow that talent from within and get those success stories to exit, but stay and keep doing it over again.
So I'm just going to say one thing. Everybody should read Dick Haskayne's book, Northern Tigers, because he talks about how we need to grow companies in Canada to scale, to become the acquirers, not the acquirees. And that's what we need to do as a country now more than ever.
100% agree. And a closing point from me, momentum is what we look at as investors with founders and like. Calgary and Alberta has tremendous momentum. Look at what Platform's done in less than a decade since its founding. The economic stats in Alberta, Minister, the best job growth in the last quarter across the country, despite having the largest influx of citizens to our area. We have so much momentum here. I'm just looking forward to the next decade.
Love it. Last word, Minister.
I just think, so now our job as a government is how do we make sure that we enable that momentum to continue. And so, a lot of great work has happened over the last 10 years to get us to this point. A lot of people from this entire ecosystem had a hand in that, so thank you to everybody for what you've done to help drive this forward. Our goal is now to say, what are some of those pain points that, 10 years ago we were focused just on keeping companies here when they started and getting access to early stage capital. We've made great progress on that. Now we got to say, how do we keep the scale-ups here? How do we build the acquirers, not the acquirees? How do we build to get to the IPOs? How do we say that instead of you building with a vision of selling out at $20 million, your goal is to say, I'm not selling out till it's $20 billion. That's what we got to focus on changing. I think some of the work we're doing on the IP strategy is going to help with that. I think the work we're working on the co-invest will help with that. And certainly focusing on being a more active customer of Alberta technology as a government is going to help with that. So there's always going to be more we can do. We will never have arrived, but we've got 3 key strategic pillars that we're focused on for the next couple of years that I think is going to help us to do our role as a province to help set the stage and lead by example. And we're looking forward to being partners with all of you and trying to make Alberta's tech sector the best it's ever been.
Well said. Well, thank you. First of all, Minister Glubish, for spending your entire day here at Platform, meeting with founders, talking to us and staying along. Huge signal for us that your commitment and dedication to the future tech in Calgary and in the province. Deb, Judy, and Brad, thank you so much for your time. And I just want to say thanks again, and fantastic conversation. I wish we had a little longer up here, but thanks very much.
Yeah, I'll just ask you to hang tight just to take a quick photo. I'd love to also invite Carolyn Conrad from Ripen to the stage to speak a few words about Ripen.
Lovely. Oh, perfect, even easier. Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you to our panelists for such a thoughtful and energizing discussion. It's been, I think I might be on double here, actually. There we go. Surround sound. For those I've not yet met, my name is Carolyn Conrad, Vice President of Canadian Ecosystem here at Ripen. Ripen is a Western Canadian founded, owned, and operated future of work technology platform with a clear mission: to close the skills gap and help end underemployment. We do this by connecting startups, micro, and small businesses with student talent ready to apply their skills to real-world projects with companies like those across the Platform Calgary network. Across every market where we operate, in North America and globally, we see the same 3 ingredients for success: talent, investment, and leadership. Since 2017, Ripen's delivered nearly 300,000 learner experiences, working with over 700 institutions and 50,000 employers. Through our partnership with the Government of Canada, we deliver the Level Up program, supporting small and medium-sized businesses in accessing talent to drive innovation and growth. Here in Alberta, that impact is tangible. Alberta employers are the 2nd highest users of Level Up, producing nearly 6,000 experiences to date. Alberta students have undertaken over 4,400 paid work experiences through the Level Up program. And just today, I can confirm that as of this morning, we have more than 2,200 employers across the province active on Ripen, spanning sectors foundational to Alberta's economy. Alberta has strong talent and investment, but where it truly stands out is leadership. Minister Nate Glubish exemplifies this through his focus on talent development, innovation, and Alberta's competitiveness. Deb Yedlin and the Calgary Chamber advocate tirelessly for transforming business community. Brad Parry and Calgary Economic Development provide strategic direction for a growing ecosystem. And Judy Fairburn and the 51 work every day to remove barriers so that more innovators can contribute. And to Jen Lussier and our partners at Platform Calgary, supporting a network of over 950 tech companies with more than 1,500 founders engaged in 2025 alone, showing just the scale that Platform is having on the ecosystem. So we're very proud to partner with Platform Calgary and to support the employers, learners, and Alberta's innovation economy. So thank you, and we're looking forward to building what's next together. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. So this concludes our Community Connect. Thank you for joining us. Thank you to our sponsors, Fasken and Ripen. And of course, thank you to our special guests today. If we could give everyone a round of applause, that would be wonderful. I'll just ask to advance it over to the next slide there. You can get your copy of our impact report if you like a digital download, or around the center we have some paper copies as well for you to take. If I could ask the audience to just hold back for a moment, we are going to get a photograph with everyone here on the stage, and then please join us in the West Hall to continue on with networking. Thank you so much.